Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the muddy boots of a medieval peasant, living a day so gritty you'll feel the straw poking your back. Picture this. It's dawn in a creaky village, roosters screaming, and you're sprawled on a lumpy sack in a hut that smells like damp wood and yesterday's stew. The air's chilly, your tunic's threadbare, and, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this life past 40. Tough gig, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love seeing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake, eyes crusty, as the first gray light sneaks through the hut's wattle and daub walls. The rooster's crow is like a medieval alarm clock, relentless and way too proud of itself. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a sack stuffed with straw, flattened from months of use. It's not exactly a memory foam mattress, more like a memory of pain. You roll over, joints creaking, and feel the cold dirt floor under your bare feet. The hut's single room is dim, with a faint whiff of smoke from last night's fire. Your wife, Agnes, snores softly, while your two kids are tangled in a heap of blankets nearby. You'd love to snooze longer, but the Lord's fields don't plow themselves. Stepping outside, you squint at the misty village. Timber-framed huts huddle together, their thatched roofs sagging like tired old men. A pig snuffles past, leaving hoofprints in the mud. You grab a wooden bucket and trudge to the well, the path slick under your worn shoes. The air smells of dew and manure, a classic medieval combo. At the well, you crank the rope, muscles straining as the bucket fills. Water sloshes over your hands, icy enough to make you wince. You mutter a curse, quietly, because the priest might hear, and you don't need a sermon about your soul today. Back in the hut, you set the bucket down and stoke the hearth. The fire's embers are barely alive, so you pile on twigs and blow until sparks catch. Smoke stings your eyes, curling up to the roof's smoke hole. Agnes stirs, muttering about the cow needing milking. You nod, already mentally listing the day's chores. Plow the Lord's strips, feed the chickens, maybe dodge the manor's taxman if you're lucky. Life as a villain means you're tied to the land, working for the Lord before your own tiny plot. Freedom? Yeah, that's for nights and daydreams. A mainstream fact. Most peasants in medieval Europe were villains, bound to their lord's manor, owing labor and a chunk of their crops. A quirky tidbit, some peasants believed sleeping with a leek under their pillow would ward off evil spirits. Good luck with that. Historians still argue whether villainage was closer to slavery or just a really bad lease agreement. Either way, you're stuck. You glance at the kids, still asleep, and feel a pang. They'll be out in the field soon, too young for this grind. You shake off the thought and grab your cloak. The day's already moving, and you're not about to let it leave you behind. That rooster's still crowing. By the way, someone needs to tell it to chill. You step back into the dawn, ready to face whatever this peasant life throws at you next. You're out the door, bucket in hand, weaving through the village's muddy lanes. The dawn mist clings to your cloak, and a stray pig grunts, nearly tripping you. You give it a half-hearted kick. Sorry, pork chop, but you're in the way. The village is stirring now, doors creaking open, smoke rising from chimneys. Your job? Haul water, feed animals, and keep the chaos at bay before the sun's fully up. It's not glamorous, but neither is anything in this dirt-caked life. The lane's a mess, churned by hooves and yesterday's rain. You dodge a puddle, then another, cursing the lack of medieval pavement. A neighbor, old Edith, waves from her doorstep, her toothless grin oddly cheerful. You nod back, too tired for chit-chat. The well's just ahead, its wooden frame groaning as you crank the rope again. Another bucket, another splash of icy water numbing your fingers. You're tempted to dunk your head in to wake up properly, but that's a hypothermia speedrun you don't need. Back home, you pour water into the cooking pot, then head to the tiny yard. The chickens cluck like they're plotting a coup, and you toss them grain, shooing a bold one off your foot. The cow, Daisy, lows mournfully in her shed. You grab a stool and milk her, the warm stream hissing into a pail. It's oddly soothing, though Daisy's tail smacks your face like she's settling a score. You chuckle, fair play, cow. The milk's for Agnes to churn later, assuming the kids don't spill it first. Next, you check the pig pen. Those greedy snouts are already rooting for scraps. You toss in vegetable peels, and they dive in like it's a five-star feast. Feeding the animals is your morning ritual, a reminder that they're your lifeline. No crops, no livestock, no survival. You pat the pig's bristly back, half joking to yourself that it's living better than you. At least it doesn't owe the Lord 3 days' labor a week. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants relied on mixed farming, growing crops and raising animals to survive harsh winters. A quirky tidbit? Some villagers thought pigs could predict storms by running in circles, meteorology by bacon. Historians still argue whether peasants had enough surplus to trade or were always one bad harvest from starvation. You're leaning toward the starvation side, given how your stomach's already growling. You glance at the sky, sun's climbing, and the Lord's fields are waiting. Agnes calls from the hut, asking if you've seen her good ladle. You haven't, but you promise to look later, knowing full well it's probably under the kids' blankets. Domestic mysteries aside, you grab a hoe and head out, dodging another pig on the lane. Seriously, who's letting these guys roam free? You make a mental note to gripe about it at the next village meeting, assuming you're not too exhausted to care. The village hums now, women fetching water, men trudging to fields, kids chasing each other. You pass the blacksmith's forge, its hammer already clanging. The rhythm's almost comforting, like the heartbeat of this hardscrabble life. You're just one piece of it, hauling and hustling, keeping the wheels turning. The day's young, but your back's already whining. No rest for the peasant, right? You smirk, shake your head, and keep moving. You're back in the hut, the morning chill lingering as you huddle by the hearth. The fire's crackling now, but it's coughing up smoke like it's auditioning for a dragon roll. You wave it away, eyes watering, and grab a wooden bowl. Breakfast is porridge, lumpy, gray, and about as exciting as a tax audit. You scoop it from the pot, the texture somewhere between glue and regret. Agnes plops down beside you, stirring her own bowl, while the kids fight over a crust of yesterday's bread. You sigh, welcome to fine dining, medieval style. The porridge is oats and water, maybe a pinch of salt if you're feeling fancy. No sugar, no fruit, just pure survival sludge. You shovel it in, the warmth spreading through your chest. It's not terrible, but you're dreaming of bacon. Fat chance pigs are for selling, not eating. You joke to Agnes that the Lord probably has honey with his porridge. She rolls her eyes, muttering about nobles and their soft hands. The kids giggle, and you wink, glad for the tiny moment of levity. The hearth is the heart of the hut, a smoky, sooty lifeline. You toss another log on, careful not to waste fuel. Wood's not free when you're scraping by. The flames dance, casting shadows on the walls, and you notice a new crack in the daub. Great, another repair job. You chew slowly, savoring the porridge's fleeting heat. Outside, the village hums, cows lowing, a neighbor shouting at his dog. You're tempted to linger, but the fields won't wait, and the Lord's overseer loves catching slackers. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants ate simple diets, mostly grains like oats or barley, with meat a rare luxury. A quirky tidbit? Some believed eating porridge with a wooden spoon carved with runes could bring good luck. Spoiler, it didn't. Historians still argue whether peasant diets were barely sufficient or outright malnourishment. Your empty stomach votes for the latter. You glance at the kids, who've now smeared porridge on their faces like war paint. You stifle a laugh, future nights, clearly. Agnes scolds them, but her eyes are soft. You push your bowl aside, already feeling the day's weight. The fire pops, sending a spark onto your tunic. You brush it off, grumbling about your luck. Maybe that rune spoon thing's worth a try. Standing, you stretch your aching back and grab your cloak. The porridge sits heavy, fueling you for the grind ahead. You step outside, the smoky warmth fading as the cold bites your face. You're trudging to the Lord's fields, the morning mist curling around your ankles like a clingy ghost. Your hoe slung over your shoulder, its handle worn smooth from years of grip. Ahead, the open fields stretch, divided into strips like a patchwork quilt. Yours is one of the smaller ones, but first, you owe the Lord 3 days' work on his land. The oxen are waiting, their breath steaming in the chilly air. You mutter a greeting, might as well be polite to the only co-workers not stealing your lunch. You yoke the beasts, their massive heads swinging as they snort. The plow's a clunky wooden thing, more stubborn than your kids on chore day. You dig your heels into the mud and push, guiding the blade through the soil. It's backbreaking, and the oxen aren't exactly team players. One keeps veering left like it's plotting a jailbreak. You curse under your breath, then laugh at yourself. If swearing burned calories, you'd be feasting tonight. The field's heavy with clay, each step a wrestle with the earth. Your hands ache, blisters forming where the plow's handle rubs raw. You glance at the other peasants, bend over their own strips, their grunts a grim chorus. The overseer looms nearby, his whip more decorative than functional, but you're not testing that theory. You keep plowing, sweat beading despite the cold. The sun's climbing, burning off the mist, and you're already dreaming of a break. A mainstream fact: medieval plowing used heavy-wheeled plows, often pulled by oxen, to turn dense soils. A quirky tidbit? Some peasants believed singing to oxen made them work harder. Your off-key humming begs to differ. Historians still argue whether the three-field system boosted yields enough to ease peasant hunger. Your growling stomach says no. You pause to wipe your brow, the oxen huffing like they're judging your pace. A crow flaps overhead, cawing as if it knows you're stuck here till dusk. You joke to yourself that it's the Lord's spy, reporting your every stumble. The field's only half done, and you're back screaming. You think of Agnes, probably milking Daisy again, and the kids, hopefully not burning the hut down. Another furrow, another step. You grit your teeth and push on, the earth resisting like it's got a personal grudge. You're at the village well, the midday sun glinting off the water as you crank the bucket up. Your arms ache from plowing, but you're here for a quick refill, and, let's be honest, a break from the oxen's attitude. The well's a hub, buzzing with villagers fetching water or just loitering. You lean against the stone rim, catching your breath, when you overhear two women whispering. Their voices drop, eyes darting, and you catch words like stolen and widow's barn. Oh, village gossip, better than a bard's tale, and twice as shady. You pretend to fuss with the bucket, ears perked. Seems Widow Marjorie's been sneaking extra grain from the Lord's stores, or so they say. One woman, Joan, clucks her tongue, saying Marjorie's got a lover helping her. The other, Beatrice, scoffs, betting it's just Marjorie's cat getting fat. You stifle a chuckle. Medieval drama's got nothing on this. You're tempted to chime in, but gossip's a risky game. One wrong word, and you're the next hot topic. You grab your full bucket and nod politely, playing the oblivious peasant. The lane's busy now, kids dodging carts, a dog yapping at a goose. You sidestep a pile of something you'd rather not identify and head home. The gossip's got you thinking Marjorie's bold if it's true. Stealing from the Lord's no joke. You've seen men flogged for less. You shake your head, half admiring her nerve, half dreading the fallout. Village life's a tightrope. Everyone knows everyone's business, and secrets don't stay buried long. A mainstream fact: medieval villages were tight-knit, with gossip often shaping social order and even justice. A quirky tidbit? Some believed well water could reveal truths if you whispered your question to it. Good luck with that splashy therapy. Historians still argue whether gossip empowered women in villages or just fueled petty feuds. You're betting on feuds, given Joan's sharp tongue. You reach the hut, setting the bucket down. Agnes is kneading dough, flour dusting her hands like snow. She asks what's new, and you shrug, keeping Marjorie's scandal to yourself. No need to stir the pot, yet. The kids are outside, yelling about a lost shoe. You joke to yourself that it's probably in the pig pen, knowing your luck. The day's half gone, and the fields are calling. You grab a crust of bread for the road, the gossip still buzzing in your head like a pesky fly. You're sprawled under an oak tree, the midday sun filtering through leaves like a lazy kaleidoscope. The fields are a few paces off, but you've earned this break after wrestling that plow all morning. You're back screaming, your hands are raw, and you're pretty sure the oxen are plotting revenge. You lean against the trunk, the bark rough against your tunic, and let your eyes drift shut. Just a quick nap. Nobody's dying if you steal 10 minutes to dream of a life with less mud and more meat. The grass is cool beneath you, dotted with clover and the occasional ant you're too tired to flick away. A breeze carries the scent of turned earth and distant wood smoke. You imagine a feast: roast pig, fresh bread, maybe even ale that doesn't taste like regret. Your stomach rumbles, reminding you of that sad porridge breakfast. You chuckle softly. Dreams are free, but they don't fill bellies. Somewhere nearby, a lark trills, its song almost mocking your grind. Yeah, laugh it up, bird. Other peasants dot the field's edge, some eating, some dozing. You spot Thomas, the miller's son, sprawled like he's auditioning for a scarecrow gig. You wave, but he's out cold. Fair enough, midday's the one time you're not dodging the overseer's glare. You shift, a root jabbing your hip, and try to get comfy. Your mind wanders to Agnes, probably wrangling the kids, and you hope they're not tormenting the chickens again. Those birds deserve a medal. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants often took midday breaks to eat or rest, especially during long field days. A quirky tidbit? Some believed napping under an oak could grant visions of the future. Your snooze is vision-free, unless you count pork fantasies. Historians still argue whether these breaks were a lord's concession or just peasants stealing moments to survive. You're just glad to be horizontal. Your eyes flutter open as a fly buzzes your nose. The sun's crept higher, and you groan, breaks over. You stand, brushing dirt off your tunic, and joke to yourself that you're one nap away from being lord of laziness. The fields wait, and so do those grumpy oxen. You stretch, bones popping like kindling, and trudge back to the grind, the oak shade already a fading memory. You're trudging back to the village, the sun high and your tunic sticking to your sweaty back. The fields are behind you for now, but there's no rest. Word spread that the Lord's tax collector is sniffing around. Your stomach twists as you pass the manor's stone walls, its gate looming like a judgmental uncle. You've got a few bushels of grain stashed, but handing them over feels like giving up a piece of your soul. You mutter to yourself, half joking that you'd rather arm wrestle an ox than face this guy. The village is tense, neighbors whispering as they hurry along. You spot the collector, a wiry man named Godwin, strutting with a ledger and a smirk that screams, "I sleep on actual pillows." He's flanked by two guards, their clubs a not-so-subtle hint to pay up. You duck behind a cart, pretending to check a wheel. Last year, Godwin took half your barley for back taxes. You're still bitter. You'd hide the grain in the pig pen if you thought the pigs wouldn't snitch. You slip home, where Agnes is sweeping the hearth. You warn her about Godwin, and she curses, loud enough to make the kids giggle. You shush her, half laughing. Her fire's why you married her, but it's a liability today. You both stash a sack of oats under the floorboards, praying Godwin's too lazy to dig. It's a risky move. Getting caught means a fine or worse. You joke to yourself that you're practically a rebel now. Robin Hood, eat your heart out. A mainstream fact, medieval lords often demanded taxes in crops or labor, leaving peasants with barely enough to survive. A quirky tidbit, some peasants tried bribing tax collectors with charmed herbs, believing it'd soften their hearts. Spoiler, it didn't. Historians still argue whether tax evasion was widespread or just desperate acts by a few. You're definitely in the desperate camp. Godwin's shadow passes the hut's window, and you hold your breath. He moves on, but you're not safe yet. You grab your hoe, heading back to your own plot to look busy. The village feels like it's holding its collective breath, everyone dodging the same threat. You smirk, thinking of that charmed herb idea. Maybe you'll try it next time, if only for the laugh. You're trudging toward the village church, its bell clanging like it's personally offended by your existence. The sun's still high, but the call to prayer waits for no peasant. Your boots squelch in the mud, and you're already regretting leaving the shade of your plot. The church looms ahead, its stone walls and wooden steeple a stark contrast to the village's sagging huts. You slip inside, the air cool and heavy with incense, and kneel on the cold floor, eyeing the stained glass saints glowing like they know all your sins. The priest, Father Edmund, drones through the Latin Mass, his voice a sleepy hum. You don't understand the words, nobody does, but you bow your head, mimicking the others. The glass depicts St. George slaying a dragon, and you wonder if he ever had to deal with tax collectors. You smirk, then catch Edmund's glare and straighten up. The pews are packed with villagers, some praying, some whispering about Widow Marjorie's grain scandal. You keep your face blank, not about to stir that pot. Kneeling, your knees ache against the stone, and the incense tickles your nose. You sneak a glance at the altar, its golden cross glinting despite the dust. The church is the village's heart, but it's also a reminder. Pay your tithes, or hell's waiting. You joke to yourself that hell might at least be warm, unlike your hut in winter. The mass drags on, and you shift, trying not to fidget. Agnes is beside you, muttering her own prayers, probably for the kids to stop stealing bread. A mainstream fact, medieval churches were central to village life, enforcing spiritual and social order through mass and tithes. A quirky tidbit? Some peasants believed touching a saint statue could cure warts. Your skepticism says otherwise. Historians still argue whether the church exploited peasants or genuinely guided their faith. You're leaning toward exploitation, given those tithe demands. Mass ends, and you shuffle out, blinking in the sunlight. The bell's still ringing, and you joke it's Father Edmund's revenge for your wandering thoughts. You nod to neighbors, avoiding gossip, and head toward the market square. Prayer's done, but the day's grind is far from over, and those turnips won't haggle themselves. You're weaving through the market square, a chaotic jumble of stalls and shouting vendors. The air smells of fresh bread, fish, and unwashed bodies, a medieval perfume you can't escape. Your sack of turnips swings from your shoulder, your plan to trade for some onions or maybe a bit of cheese if you're lucky. The crowd's thick, villagers elbowing past, a stray dog dodging underfoot. You grip your sack tighter. Pickpockets love a distracted peasant. You mutter to yourself, half joking that you're one bad deal away from bartering your kids. You spot a stall with a grizzled merchant, his table piled with vegetables and a dubious slab of cheese. You offer 2 turnips for an onion, and he squints like you've insulted his ancestors. After some back and forth, you settle on 3 turnips for 1 scrawny onion. Victory? Hardly, but you'll take it. You move on, eyeing a baker's stall, the loaves taunting your empty stomach. Bread's a luxury, and your grain's already earmarked for the Lord. You sigh, maybe in your next life, you'll be the one selling the bread. The square's alive with noise, a bard strumming a lute, a woman yelling about her miracle herbs, kids darting through the chaos. You overhear a snippet about Widow Marjorie again. Seems her lover might be the blacksmith. You chuckle, remembering Joan's gossip at the well. Village rumors spread faster than fleas. You dodge a cart piled with cabbages, its driver cursing a dawdling mule. The energy's infectious, but you're already tired, and the day's not half done. A mainstream fact: medieval markets were vital for trade, letting peasants barter goods and hear news. A quirky tidbit? Some believed haggling under a full moon brought better deals. Your empty pockets disagree. Historians still argue whether markets gave peasants economic freedom or just tied them tighter to the manor's grip. You're betting on the grip. You tuck the onion in your sack, joking to yourself that it's your big one of the day. The square's still buzzing, but you've got hay to cut before dusk. You shoulder through the crowd, the market's clamor fading as you head back to the fields, ready for another round of sweat and blisters. You're back in the fields, the afternoon sun baking your neck as you swing a sickle through hay. The blades dull, each cut a fight, and your palms burn with fresh blisters. You're harvesting fodder for the Lord's livestock. Your own animals get the scraps, naturally. The hay scratches your arms, dust clogging your nose, and you're pretty sure you've inhaled half the field. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow, and joke to yourself that you're one sneeze away from becoming a scarecrow. The field hums with other peasants, their sickles flashing in rhythm. You nod to Thomas, the miller's son, who's cursing his own blade. Solidarity in misery, right? The air's thick with the sweet, dry scent of cut grass, mingling with the ever-present manure tang. Your back screams with every bend, but you keep swinging. Stopping means falling behind, and the overseer's never far off. You glance at the horizon, praying for a cloud to cut the heat. No luck. Typical. You think of that onion you scored at the market, a small triumph. Agnes might make a decent stew tonight, assuming the kids don't help and ruin it. You chuckle, imagining their chaos. The hay piles grow, your pile neater than Thomas's, though you won't brag yet. You're tempted to lie down in the shade, but the last guy who tried that got a lecture from the overseer about idleness. You'd rather keep your dignity than test his patience. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants used sickles for harvesting hay and crops, a slow, grueling task essential for feeding livestock. A quirky tidbit? Some believed a sickle blessed by a priest could cut faster. Your aching arms call that nonsense. Historians still argue whether communal field work built village unity or just resentment. You're leaning toward resentment, given Thomas's lazy stacking. A fly buzzes your ear, and you swat it, muttering about your glamorous life. The sun's dipping, but there's hours of work left. You grip the sickle tighter, ignoring the blisters, and swing again. The hay falls, the pile grows, and you trudge on, one sore step at a time, dreaming of the moment you can collapse by the hearth. You're slogging back to the village, sickle stashed, the afternoon heat still clinging to your tunic. Your hands throb, blisters raw from the hay, but you're headed home for a quick check-in before the next chore. As you near the hut, you hear shrieks, your kids, tearing around the yard like feral cats, chasing the chickens. Feathers fly, the hens squawk, and you groan. You shout their names, Alice and Tom, but they ignore you, too caught up in their chaos. You joke to yourself that they're training for the village nuisance Olympics. You step into the yard, dodging a flapping hen. Alice, 7, is waving a stick, while Tom, 5, giggles and throws dirt. The chickens are in full panic, and you spot Daisy the cow eyeing the scene like she's above it all. You bellow again, and they finally freeze, guilty grins on their muddy faces. You scold them, half-hearted, hard to stay mad when they're the only ones who make this life bearable. You tell them to leave the poor birds alone. Those hens are your egg supply, not toys. Agnes pokes her head out, flour on her nose, and sighs at the mess. She's baking flatbread, and the kids' chaos is not helping. You heard them inside, promising a story later if they behave. They whine but obey, trailing dirt across the floor. You grab a broom, sweeping up feathers, and mutter about needing a vacation, maybe a nice pilgrimage to nowhere. Agnes snorts, handing you a crust of bread. You take a bite, savoring the chewy warmth, a small win in a long day. A mainstream fact: medieval peasant children often helped with chores but also played, disrupting village routines. A quirky tidbit? Some believed chickens could curse you if you scared them too much. Your hens might be plotting now. Historians still argue whether kids were a labor asset or just added strain for peasant families. Your aching head says strain. You glance outside. The chickens are calming, but the day's not done. You tell Agnes you're off to check the fields again. She nods, already wrangling Tom away from the fire. You step out, the kids' laughter echoing, and smile despite yourself. Back to the grind, but those little terrors keep you going. You're in the village lane, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows as you head toward old Edith's hut. Word is, she's feuding with neighbor Ralph over stolen firewood again. You've been roped in to mediate, mostly because you're too tired to say no. The air's cooling, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. You pass a kid kicking a leather ball, and you half-joke to yourself that you'd rather referee that game than this firewood drama. At Edith's, she's waving a gnarled finger, her voice sharp as she accuses Ralph of sneaking into her stack at night. Ralph, red-faced, swears his pile's just as low and maybe Edith's the thief. You rub your temples, wishing you were back in the fields with the oxen. They're less chatty. You ask for proof, knowing there's none. Edith claims she heard Ralph's boots creaking. He counters that her dog's been barking at shadows. It's a medieval standoff, and you're the unlucky judge. You suggest splitting a new stack from the communal pile, hoping they'll agree to shut up. Edith grumbles but nods. Ralph mutters something about her cooking fumes but gives in. You're no Solomon, but it'll do. Village feuds like this flare up over nothing: firewood, stray goats, you name it. You chuckle, thinking of the market's gossip about Widow Marjorie. At least she's not stealing logs. Yet, a mainstream fact: medieval villages often settled disputes informally, with neighbors like you playing peacemaker to keep the peace. A quirky tidbit? Some believed burying a stone under a neighbor's doorstep could end quarrels. Your aching feet say no thanks. Historians still argue whether these feuds strengthen community bonds or just sow distrust. You're voting for distrust, given Ralph's glare. You leave them to their grudging truce and head home, the sky bruising purple. Agnes is waiting, and you're craving that stew. You joke to yourself that next time, you're sending the chickens to mediate. They'd cause less fuss. The village settles into evening, but you know another squabble's just a spark away. You're slumped by the hearth, the evening shadows pooling in the hut's corners. The fire's low, spitting sparks as Agnes ladles watery stew into your bowl. It's cabbage, a sad carrot, and that onion you haggled for at the market. Hardly a feast, but it's hot, and that's enough. You blow on a spoonful, the steam warming your face, and take a sip. It's thin, bland, and you're craving meat like it's a lost lover. You joke to Agnes that the Lord's probably gnawing on venison. She snorts, stirring the pot, and says you'd choke on the bones anyway. The kids, Alice and Tom, are cross-legged on the floor, slurping their portions. Tom's got stew on his chin, and Alice is poking him, giggling. You shoot them a mock glare, but your heart's not in it. The hut smells of boiled vegetables and smoke, the fire's glow softening the rough walls. You savor each sip, knowing this is the day's big meal. Bread's gone, and the porridge from breakfast feels like a distant memory. You think of that pig in the pen. One day, maybe, you'll eat like a king. Dream on. Outside, the village is quieting, save for a dog's bark and the faint creak of a cart. You're bone-tired, blisters throbbing from the sickle, but this moment by the fire is your reward. Agnes sits beside you, her bowl empty. She always eats fast to feed the kids. You pass her a spoonful of your stew, and she smiles, a rare soft moment in the grind. You chuckle, saying it's practically a love poem. She rolls her eyes but takes the bite. A mainstream fact: medieval peasant diets leaned heavily on vegetable stews, with meat reserved for festivals or the wealthy. A quirky tidbit? Some believed stirring stew counterclockwise could curse the meal. Your stomach hopes Agnes didn't try it. Historians still argue whether these meager diets fueled enough energy for field labor or left peasants perpetually weak. Your aching muscles vote for weak. You finish the stew, scraping the bowl like it's a treasure hunt. The kids are yawning, and you know bedtime's close. You lean back, the fire's warmth seeping into your bones, and brace for the evening's next task. Whatever it is, it'll be less tasty than this. You're gathered by the hearth, the fire's glow flickering across the hut's walls as night settles over the village. The stew's gone, bowl stacked, and the kids, Alice and Tom, are curled up on their straw mats, eyes wide. Agnes nudges you. It's story time, your nightly ritual to lull them to sleep. You clear your throat, adopting a low, spooky tone, and spin a folktale about a ghostly monk haunting the old mill. The flames dance, casting shadows that make Tom clutch his blanket. You smirk, enjoying their gasps, and joke to yourself that you're the village's creepiest bard. The tale's a classic. The monk, cursed for stealing alms, wanders the mill, rattling chains and moaning for redemption. You stretch the details, describing his hollow eyes and the chill of his touch. Alice whispers, "Is it true?" You wink, saying only fools cross the mill at midnight. Agnes rolls her eyes but plays along, adding a creepy hum. The hut feels smaller, the fire's crackle amplifying the eerie mood. Outside, an all hoots and Tom squeaks, diving under his blanket. You chuckle, mission accomplished. These stories are more than bedtime tricks. They're how the village passes down warnings and wisdom. Don't stray near the mill. Don't trust strangers. Don't anger the spirits. You lean back, the straw creaking under you, and watch the kids' eyelids droop. The fire's warmth battles the night's chill seeping through the walls. You think of your own childhood, huddling by a similar hearth, scared silly by tales of will-o-wisps. Some things never change. A mainstream fact, medieval folktales often blended Christian morals with pagan superstition, shaping peasant behavior. A quirky tidbit? Some believe telling ghost stories by firelight could summon spirits. Your empty hut says otherwise. Historians still argue whether these tales were mere entertainment or a tool for social control. You're betting control, given how they keep kids in line. You finish the story, the monk vanishing in a wail. The kids are half asleep, Agnes yawning. You joke softly that the monk's probably haunting Ralph's firewood stack now. The fire's dying, and you've got tools to mend before bed. You stand, bones creaking, and let the tale's echoes linger, a spooky thread tying your family to the village's past. You're hunched by the hearth, the fire now a faint glow casting jittery shadows. The kids are snoring, their faces slack in the dim light, and Agnes is darning a tunic, her needle glinting. You've got a broken hoe handle to fix, squinting in the candlelight's weak flicker. The candle's tallow, smelling faintly of grease, and it's burning faster than you'd like, another expense you can't afford. You mutter to yourself, half joking that you're mending your dreams as much as this tool, one splinter at a time. The hose handle is cracked, useless until you patch it. You whittle a spare stick, hands steady despite the day's ache. The wood shavings curl onto the floor, and you're careful not to let them catch a spark. The hut's quiet, save for the fire's soft pop and Agnes's steady breathing. Outside, the village is still, the night thick with the hum of crickets. You pause, rubbing your eyes, the candle's glow blurring. This is your life. Endless repairs, endless days, all for a scrap of survival. You bind the handle with twine, testing its strength. It'll hold for now. You think of the fields, the hay still waiting, and groan inwardly. The Lord's demands never stop, and your own plot's a mess. You glance at Agnes, her head nodding over her sewing. You'd let her sleep, but she'd scold you for it. You chuckle, imagining her lecture, something about lazy husbands and hungry kids. The candle sputters, and you curse, trimming the wick with a knife. A mainstream fact, medieval peasants maintained their own tools, as blacksmiths were costly and reserved for bigger jobs. A quirky tidbit? Some believed tools left unrepaired overnight could be cursed by fairies, your broken hoe's just unlucky, not hexed. Historians still argue whether self-reliance made peasants resilient or just trapped them in a cycle of labor. Your sore hands vote for trapped. You finish, setting the hoe aside. The candle's nearly gone, and your eyes burn. You joke to yourself that you're one repair away from becoming a master craftsman or a permanent squinter. Agnes stirs, and you both shuffle toward bed, the night's work done, but the morning's grind already looming. You're slipping out of the hut, the night air sharp against your face as you head to the animal shed. The village is dark, stars pinpricking the sky, and your breath clouds in the chill. The kids are asleep, Agnes is dozing, and you're checking the livestock before bed. Cows don't care about your exhaustion. You carry a rushlight, its feeble flame dancing, and joke to yourself that you're a one-man night watch, guarding against rogue foxes and your own bad luck. The shed's a rickety lean-to, smelling of hay and manure. Daisy the cow lows softly as you step in, her eyes glinting in the light. She's restless, shifting in her stall, and you murmur to her, patting her flank. You check her water, topping it off from a bucket, and toss in extra hay. The chickens cluck from their coop, probably still mad about the kids' chase earlier. You peek in, counting heads, all there. No fox dinners tonight. The pigs snort in their pen, dreaming of slop. You're tempted to join them. They've got less to worry about. You pause, listening to the night. A distant dog barks, but the shed's calm, the animals settled. You think of that ghostly monk tale you told the kids, half expecting a spectral move from Daisy. You chuckle, shaking your head, sleep deprivation's making you loopy. The rushlight's fading, and you're not wasting another. You give Daisy one last pat, promising her a better day tomorrow, though you both know that's a lie. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants checked livestock nightly, as animals were critical for food and labor. A quirky tidbit? Some believe stroking a cow's back under moonlight ensured good milk. Your skeptical Pat says otherwise. Historians still argue whether livestock care gave peasants stability or just chained them to more work. Your aching back screams work. You step out, the cold biting harder. The village sleeps, but you're wired, mind ticking over tomorrow's chores. You joke to yourself that Daisy's your therapist, listening without judgment. Back to the hut, you douse the rushlight, ready to collapse, the animal's soft noises a faint comfort in the dark. You're back in the hut, the night's chill seeping through the walls as you huddle with your family. The fire's down to embers, barely warming the cramped room, and you're all piled together on straw mats. Yourself, Agnes, Alice, and Tom. Blankets are thin, so you share body heat, your breath mingling in the dark. Tom's already snoring, his head on your arm, and you joke to yourself that he's warmer than the hearth. The hut smells of smoke and sweat, a familiar cocoon against the cold outside. Agnes shifts closer, her hand brushing yours, and you feel a flicker of comfort. Alice mumbles in her sleep, something about chickens, and you stifle a chuckle. The straw beneath you crackles, poking through the blanket, but you're too tired to care. The village is silent, save for the wind rattling the thatch. You think of Daisy in the shed, hoping she's snug, and the pigs, probably dreaming of your vegetable scraps. Everyone's hunkered down, human and beast, riding out the night. You pull the blanket tighter, your mind drifting to the day's grind, Godwin's tax threats, the haze dust, Ralph and Edith's squabble. It's a lot, but this huddle, this warmth, keeps you grounded. You whisper a half-prayer for a mild winter, knowing spring's too far off to bank on. Agnes murmurs, half asleep, asking if you fixed the hoe. You nod, though she can't see, and squeeze her hand. Moments like this, rare and quiet, are why you keep going. A mainstream fact: medieval peasant families often slept together in one room, sharing heat and space to survive cold nights. A quirky tidbit? Some believe sleeping in a circle warded off night spirits, your tangled piles just practical, not mystical. Historians still argue whether close-knit sleeping strengthened family bonds or just reflected poverty's harsh limits. Your numb arm, pinned by Tom, votes for poverty. You close your eyes, the kid's soft breaths lulling you. You joke to yourself that you're the king of this tiny, drafty castle. Sleep tugs, but tomorrow's chores loom. For now, you sink into the warmth, letting the night hold you all close. You're outside the hut, the night sky a vast canvas of twinkling stars, their cold light no match for the chill biting your face. You've slipped away from the family huddle, too restless to sleep, your mind churning over crop yields and winter's threat. The village is hushed, its huts dark lumps against the horizon. You lean against the wall, the rough daub cool under your hands, and gaze upward, half joking to yourself that the stars are mocking your empty granary. The air smells of frost and distant wood smoke, a sharp reminder of the season's turning. You think of your wheat, still unharvested, and the barley you owe the Lord. A bad yield could mean hunger by spring, and the thought twists your gut. You kick a pebble, watching it skitter into the dark. The fields are out there, waiting, but tonight they feel like a trap, too much work, too little reward. You mutter about the weather, as if the stars care about your soggy soil. A memory surfaces, last year's blight, when half the village went hungry. You traded your best hen for a sack of oats, and Agnes still hasn't forgiven you. You chuckle, but it's hollow. The stars don't answer, and you're not sure you want them to. Somewhere, a nightjar calls, its eerie trill making you shiver. You think of that ghostly monk tale you told the kids, half tempted to check the mill. Nah, you're worried enough without chasing spooks. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants lived in constant fear of crop failures, which could lead to famine within months. A quirky tidbit? Some believed stargazing could predict harvests your empty stomach sees no cosmic hits. Historians still argue whether peasants' reliance on crops made them resilient planners or just victims of nature. Your gnawing worry picks victim. You sigh, the cold urging you back inside. You joke to yourself that you'll barter with the stars next. Maybe they'll take a turnip. The hut's warmth calls, and you slip back to your family, the night's weight lingering as you close the door. You're jolted awake by that cursed rooster, its crows slicing through the pre-dawn hush like a knife. The hut's dark, the air chilly, and you're tangled in blankets with Agnes and the kids. Your back aches from the straw mat, and you groan, already dreading the day's grind. You nudge Agnes, who mumbles something about Daisy needing milking, and stumble to your feet, the dirt floor cold under your toes. You joke to yourself that you're the king of early mornings, more like the jester, tripping over a bucket in the gloom. Outside, the village is stirring, mist curling around the huts like a shy ghost. You grab your cloak, the wool scratchy but warm, and head to the shed. Daisy lows as you fill her trough, her breath steaming in the chill. The chickens cluck, demanding grain, and you toss some, shooing a bold hen off your boot. The pigs snort, eager for slop, and you promise them scraps later. It's the same routine, day after day, and you're half tempted to let the rooster run the show. It's got the energy for it. You trudge to the fields, the sky bruising pink. The Lord's strips need plowing, and your own plot's a mess of weeds. You think of Godwin's tax threats, and that gossip about Widow Marjorie. Village life never lets up. Your stomach growls, the stew from last night a faint memory. You chuckle, imagining a feast of roast pig, but it's back to porridge reality for you. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants started work at dawn, their days dictated by livestock and crops. A quirky tidbit: some believed roosters were messengers of the sun god, your noisy bird's just a loudmouth. Historians still argue whether this relentless routine built discipline or just wore peasants down. Your creaking joints vote for worn down. You grab the plow, the oxen already eyeing you like you're the worst boss ever. Another day, another furrow. You joke to yourself that you'll retire to a castle someday, yeah, right? The village hums awake, and you dive back into the grind, the rooster's crow still ringing in your ears. You're trudging through the village, the morning sun climbing as you catch whispers of a festival on the horizon. It's St. Cuthbert's Day soon, a rare break from the grind, and you're already dreaming of ale and dancing. Your hose slung over your shoulder, but your steps lighter, the promise of music and meat lifting the weight of plowing and taxes. You joke to yourself that you'll twirl Agnes like a noble, assuming you don't trip over a pig first. The lane's busy, villagers chattering about the feast. You overhear Joan planning a new bonnet, as if the Lord cares about her fashion. At the well, you pause, cranking up a bucket, and nod to Thomas, the miller's son. He's grinning, saying the manor's promised a pig roast. Your mouth waters, actual meat, not just stewed dreams. You both laugh, plotting to snag the best cuts before Ralph hogs it all. Festivals are a lifeline, a chance to forget Godwin's ledger and the muddy fields, if only for a day. You think of the kids, Alice and Tom, who'll go wild for the games, sack races, maybe a tug-of-war. Agnes will want to gossip with the women, probably about Widow Marjorie's latest scandal. You chuckle, imagining the village square alive with fiddles and torches. It's not just fun, it's defiance against the daily slog. You splash water on your face, the cold snapping you back, and vow to save a few turnips to trade for ale. A mainstream fact: medieval festivals, often tied to saints' days, gave peasants rare moments of communal joy and feasting. A quirky tidbit: some believe dancing in a circle under festival lanterns could bless next year's crops. Your two left feet aren't convinced. Historians still argue whether these events were genuine relief or just the Lord's way of keeping peasants docile. Your growling stomach votes for relief. You shoulder your hoe, the festival's glow fading as the fields call. You joke to yourself that you'll practice your dance moves on the oxen. They're terrible partners. The day's grind awaits, but that promise of celebration keeps you moving. You're crouched in the hut, the morning light slanting through the smoke hole as you and Agnes shuffle a sack of grain under the floorboards. The church's tithe collector is due, and you're not about to hand over your last wheat without a fight. Your heart's pounding, the dirt floor cool under your fingers as you pat the hiding spot smooth. You joke to yourself that you're a master smuggler now, though the stakes, hunger or a priest's wrath, aren't exactly funny. Outside, the village is tense, everyone dodging Father Edmund's assistant, a weaselly man named Simon who tallies tithes with a vulture's glee. You've seen him confiscate entire harvests for shortfalls, leaving families scrambling. Agnes whispers to keep the kids quiet. Alice and Tom are playing in the yard, oblivious to the high-stakes game. You stash a few turnips in a basket for show, hoping Simon buys your poor peasant act. Agnes mutters about his greasy hair, and you stifle a laugh. Her sharp tongue's a liability today. You think of that festival hope, St. Cuthbert's Day, and how this grain could mean extra ale or bread. Handing it over feels like betraying your family's survival. You're not alone. Half the village hides something. Ralph's probably got barley in his loft. You smirk, imagining Simon's face if he caught you, but the thought sours fast. A flogging or fine could break you. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants owed a tithe, typically a tenth of their crops, to the church, enforced rigorously. A quirky tidbit: some believed hiding tithes under a cross-shaped plank could dodge divine wrath. Your floor's just plain wood. No miracles here. Historians still argue whether tithe evasion was widespread rebellion or desperate survival. Your sweaty palms vote survival. Simon's shadow passes the hut, his footsteps crunching. You hold your breath, Agnes gripping your arm. He moves on, and you exhale, but the fear lingers. You joke to yourself that you'll offer him a cursed turnip next time. The grain's safe for now, and you head to the fields, the weight of secrecy heavier than your hoe. You're in the fields, the sky a sullen gray as rain spits down, turning the soil to sludge. Your cloak's soaked, heavy as guilt, and you're cursing the clouds for ruining your wheat. The harvest's close, but this wet spell could rot it all, leaving you with nothing but hunger and Godwin's smug tax demands. You swing your hoe, breaking clumps of mud, and joke to yourself that you're farming soup now. Medieval minestrone, hold the flavor. The other peasants are out too, heads bowed against the drizzle, their curses a low chorus. You nod to Thomas, his face grim as he checks his barley. A bad harvest means tight belts, maybe selling a pig to survive. You think of Agnes and the kids, picturing their disappointed faces when the stew gets thinner. The rain's relentless, seeping into your boots, and you're half tempted to shake your fist at the sky. Instead, you keep working, the mud sucking at your feet like it's got a personal grudge. You remember last spring's flood, when the river took half your plot. The village pulled through, sharing scraps, but it was grim. Now, with the festival looming, you're praying for sun to save the mood and your grain. You chuckle, imagining dancing at St. Cuthbert's Day in this muck. You'd slip and faceplant before the first fiddle note. A mainstream fact: medieval agriculture was at the mercy of weather, with rain often causing crop failures and famine. A quirky tidbit: some peasants believed tying a red ribbon to a plow could ward off storms. Your drenched tunic begs to differ. Historians still argue whether peasants adapted to weather shifts or were helplessly vulnerable. Your soggy field screams vulnerable. A gust chills you, and you pull your cloak tighter, the rain dripping off your nose. You joke to yourself that you're one puddle away from becoming a fish. The day's young, but the fields are a lost cause for now. You trudge toward home, hoping Agnes has the fire going. The rains patter a mocking echo of your worries. You're in the hut, the afternoon rain drumming on the thatch as you fumble with a basket-weaving project. The fields are too soggy for work, so you're trying a side hustle to trade for extra grain or maybe ale for the festival. Your fingers, calloused from the sickle, are about as nimble as a cow's hoofs. The willow strips tangle, the basket looking more like a bird's nest gone wrong. You mutter, half joking to yourself that you're crafting a masterpiece for the Lord's compost heap. Agnes is by the hearth, stirring a pot, her smirk louder than words as she watches you struggle. The kids, Alice and Tom, are underfoot, helping by scattering straw. You shoo them, but Tom grabs a strip and waves it like a sword, declaring himself a knight. You chuckle, telling him knights don't battle baskets. The hut smells of damp wool and simmering cabbage, the fire's warmth barely cutting the chill. You curse as another strip snaps, your patience fraying faster than the wave. You think of the market, where a decent basket might fetch a few onions or a candle. Every bit helps, especially with the harvest looking grim. You're no craftsman, your hands are built for plows, not finesse, but you're stubborn. Agnes teases that your basket's cursed, and you retort it's just practicing for the fair. She laughs, and for a moment, the rain's gloom lifts. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants often took up crafts like basket weaving to supplement their income or barter goods. A quirky tidbit: some believed weaving by candlelight invited elves to tamper. Your mess needs no mythical help. Historians still argue whether such side hustles offered real economic relief or just stretched peasants thinner. Your mangled basket votes thinner. You give up, tossing the mess aside. The kids giggle, and you joke you'll sell it as abstract art to a passing merchant. The rain's easing, and the fields might dry soon. You stretch, ready to escape this craft disaster, the hut's cozy chaos a small shield against the day's frustrations. You're at the village edge, the late afternoon air damp as you meet a passing merchant by the road. His cart's piled with cloth and pots, his mule snorting impatiently. He's got news from beyond the manor, and you're all ears, hoping for something to spice up the muddy monotony. The merchant, a wiry man with a patchy beard, spins wild tales, a dragon sighted in York, a king's bastard hiding in a nunnery. You grin, half joking to yourself that he's selling stories as much as his wares. You lean on a fence, though it's slick from the morning's rain. Villagers gather, drawn by the merchant's loud voice. He claims a two-headed calf was born in the next shire, a sure omen of doom. Old Edith gasps, clutching her shawl, while Thomas, the miller's son, scoffs, betting it's just a drunk farmer's tale. You stay quiet, savoring the gossip. It's better than another round of Ralph's firewood drama. The merchant winks, offering a lucky charm for a penny. You pass. Your luck's bad enough without his trinkets. These travelers bring the world to your doorstep, tales of wars and wonders you'll never see. You think of Widow Marjorie's scandal, wondering if it'll reach the merchant's repertoire. You chuckle, imagining her as the nunnery runaway. The mule brays, and the merchant moves on, his cart creaking. You're left buzzing, the story's a brief escape from the harvest looming threat. A mainstream fact: medieval merchants were key conduits for news, spreading stories true and exaggerated across villages. A quirky tidbit? Some believed a merchant's first word in a village could predict its fortune. Your skepticism says hogwash. Historians still argue whether these tales informed peasants or just fed superstition. Your raised eyebrow votes superstition. You head home, the sky purpling. You joke to yourself that you'll tell the kids a dragon's guarding the grain, just to see Tom's eyes pop. The village settles, but the merchant's wild rumors linger, a spark of the unknown in your predictable grind. You're trudging through the village, the evening air cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth. Word spread that old Edith's taken ill, a fever that's got her shivering in her hut. You're headed there, a bundle of herbs from Agnes clutched in your hand, useless, probably, but it's what you've got. Your stomach's tight, the fear of sickness spreading like wildfire in a village this close-knit. You joke to yourself that you're a healer now, about as qualified as the rooster to cure anything. Edith's hut is dim, the air thick with the smell of sweat and straw. She's on her pallet, muttering, her face flushed under a thin blanket. Her daughter, Joan, wrings a cloth, her eyes red. You hand over the herbs, mumbling something about boiling them for tea. Joan nods, but you both know it's more hope than medicine. You think of the last fever, 2 winters back, that took half a dozen, including Thomas's sister. The memory's a cold weight, and you push it down. You step outside, the stars sharp overhead. The village feels fragile, every cough a threat. You wonder if Edith caught it from that merchant's visit. His wild tales didn't mention plague. Agnes is home, keeping the kids away, but you'll all be exposed soon enough. You mutter a prayer, half-hearted, wishing for a physician who's not just a butcher with fancier knives. The night's quiet, but it's a tense quiet, like the calm before a storm. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants faced frequent illness, with fevers often deadly due to poor sanitation and no real medicine. A quirky tidbit? Some believe tying garlic around the neck could ward off fever. Your nose says no thanks. Historians still argue whether villages rallied around the sick or shunned them to survive. Your visit to Edith leans toward rallying, but fear's creeping in. You head home, joking to yourself that you'll gargle ale to stay healthy, wishful thinking. The hut's warmth waits, but Edith's fever haunts you, a reminder of how fast this life can unravel. You're in the fields, the autumn chill biting your fingers as you swing a sickle through wheat, racing the season's end. The sky's clear, a relief after the rain, but the ground's still heavy, clinging to your boots. Harvest time's a sprint. Every stalk counts, or it's hunger by spring. Your arms burn, blisters raw, and you're muttering about the Lord's share swallowing half your yield. You joke to yourself that you're reaping gold for his table while you'll be lucky to get porridge. Other peasants dot the field, their sickles flashing, a grim race against frost. You nod to Thomas, his pile bigger but sloppier show off. The air smells of cut grain and sweat, the rhythm of slicing and bundling almost hypnotic. You think of Edith's fever, hoping she pulls through. The village can't afford another loss. The festival's coming, St. Cuthbert's Day, and you're banking on this harvest to trade for a proper feast. Your stomach growls, dreaming of that promised pig roast. You pause, wiping your brow, and check the sheaves. Not bad, but the yield's thin. Those rainy weeks took their toll. You think of the grain you hid from the tithe collector, a risky win you're still sweating over. A crow caws, perched on a fence, and you shoo it, half laughing that it's the Lord's spy, eyeing your stash. Keep moving, keep cutting, dusk is creeping, and the overseer's never far. A mainstream fact: medieval harvests were critical, with entire villages mobilizing to gather crops before winter. A quirky tidbit? Some believed singing harvest songs could coax the earth to yield more. Your horse hums, not convincing anyone. Historians still argue whether good harvests eased peasant lives or just fattened the Lord's coffers. Your meager pile screams coffers. You bind another sheaf, the wheat's golden ends rough against your hands. You joke to yourself that you'll weave a crown from it and call yourself Harvest King. Dream on. The sun's dipping, but there's no stopping. You push on, the field's demands as relentless as the hope driving you forward. You're at the village bridge, the late morning sun glinting off the sluggish river as you have to hammer with a dozen other peasants. The bridge, a creaky wooden span, took a beating from last spring's flood, and it's wobbling like a drunk. You're all pitching in to fix it, Lord's orders, but it's your lifeline to the market too. You swing the hammer, driving a nail into a fresh plank, and joke to yourself that you're a carpenter now, one splinter away from glory. The air smells of wet wood and mud, the river gurgling below. Thomas is hauling logs, grunting louder than necessary, while Ralph argues with Joan about nail placement. You roll your eyes, same old village squabbles, even on a communal job. Your hands are sore from harvesting, but you keep pounding, the rhythm steadying your nerves. The bridge matters. Without it, your turnips stay unsold, and the festival's ale stays a dream. You think of Agnes, home with the kids, and hope they're not terrorizing the chickens again. A plank slips, splashing into the river, and everyone groans. You laugh, calling it an offering to the river spirits, earning a chuckle from Thomas. These group efforts bind the village, grudges or not. You glance at Edith's daughter, Joan, hammering nearby. She says her mother's fever broke, and you exhale, relieved. Maybe luck's turning. The overseer watches from the bank, ensuring no one slacks, but you're too focused to care. A mainstream fact: medieval villages often worked together on communal tasks like bridge repairs, essential for trade and survival. A quirky tidbit? Some believed hammering at noon could scare off trolls living under bridges. Your noon swing's just practical. Historians still argue whether these projects fostered unity or were forced labor in disguise. Your aching arms vote forced. You drive another nail, the bridge slowly firming up. You joke to yourself that it'll outlast the Lord's manor, wishful thinking. The day's wearing on, but the work's worth it, a rare chance to build something lasting in this relentless life. You're in the yard, the late afternoon air crisp as you stack firewood against the hut's wall. Winter's looming, and the thought of frozen nights drives you to hoard every scrap of timber. Your hands, still sore from the bridge repair, grip the rough logs, splinters needling your palms. The pile's growing, but it's never enough. Last year, you burned through half your stock by January. You joke to yourself that you're building a fortress, not a woodpile, though it's more likely to keep out frost than bandits. The village is bustling, everyone scrambling to prep for the cold. You spot Ralph hauling branches, probably still sore about his feud with Edith, but he nods. Shared survival trumps grudges. Agnes is inside, salting what little cabbage you've got, while the kids, Alice and Tom, dart around, helping by dropping sticks. You shoo them, laughing when Tom trips over a root and declares it a dragon's trap. You ruffle his hair, promising to slay it later. You think of the harvest, the wheat you reap despite the rain, and the grain still hidden from the tithe collector. It's a gamble, but winter's no time for charity to the church. The festival's coming, a brief spark before the dark months, and you're hoping to trade a log or two for ale. You stack another piece, the wood's weight grounding you against the dread of snow and empty bowls. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants stockpiled firewood and food to survive harsh winters, often facing shortages. A quirky tidbit? Some believe stacking wood in a spiral could ward off frost spirits. Your messy pile's just practical. Historians still argue whether winter prep showed peasant foresight or just desperate scrambling. Your aching back votes scrambling. A log slips, nearly crushing your foot, and you curse, then chuckle. Typical luck. You joke to yourself that you'll burn the whole pile for St. Cuthbert's Day and dance in the warmth. The sun's dipping, and you've got more to haul. You keep stacking, the woodpile a small defiance against the cold waiting to bite. You're in the village church, the evening air heavy with incense as you kneel on the cold stone floor. The candles flicker, casting shadows on the stained glass saints, their eyes seeming to judge your every doubt. Father Edmund's voice echoes, a solemn prayer for the harvest and health, but you're whispering your own hopes for Edith's recovery, for enough grain to last winter, for the kids to grow past this grind. You joke to yourself that you're bargaining with God like you haggled for that onion at the market. The pews are packed, villagers hushed, their faces worn but earnest. You spot Joan, her head bowed, likely thanking the heavens for her mother's mending fever. Agnes is beside you, her hands clasped, praying harder than you ever could. The church is a refuge, but also a reminder of the tithe you dodged, guilt pricks, but survival's a stronger pull. You think of the festival tomorrow, St. Cuthbert's Day, and pray for one day of joy before winter's grip. The altar's cross gleams, and you wonder if the saints ever toiled in fields or hid grain from collectors. You chuckle softly, earning a side-eye from Agnes. The mass ends, and you rise, knees aching, the incense lingering in your cloak. Outside, the night's crisp, stars bright, and you feel a fragile hope, like a seed under frost. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants attended church regularly, seeking divine protection for crops and health. A quirky tidbit? Some believe praying with a pebble in your shoe could speed answers. Your sore feet say no thanks. Historians still argue whether faith gave peasants strength or just chained them to the church's demands. Your whispered plea leans toward strength. You walk home, the village quiet, the festival's promise warming you. You joke to yourself that you'll pray for a pig roast next, just to see if God's listening. The hut waits, and with it, the final night before the celebration you've earned. You're back in the hut, the night deep and still, the fire reduced to a soft glow of embers. Agnes and the kids are asleep, their breaths a quiet rhythm against the straw mats. You're sprawled beside them, the blanket thin but warm with shared heat, the day's weight settling into your bones. The festival awaits tomorrow, St. Cuthbert's Day, with its promise of ale and laughter. But for now, you're drifting, the village silent beyond the walls. You joke to yourself that you've survived another day, a peasant's gold medal, though the prize is just more dawn. The air smells of smoke and earth, the hut's familiar creaks a lullaby. You think of the wheat you reaped, the bridge you helped mend, the grain you hid from Simon's greedy hands. Each choice, each ache, a thread in this hardscrabble life. You picture Alice and Tom at the festival, chasing games, their giggles brighter than any lord's feast. Agnes's face flashes in your mind, her rare smile when you danced last year, clumsy but happy. These are the sparks that keep you plowing through mud and doubt. Your eyes trace the roof shadows, the thatch a patchwork of survival. You think of Edith, her fever broken, and the woodpile, your shield against winter. The stars you gazed at nights ago feel distant now, their cold light no match for this fleeting peace. You whisper a half-thought to the dark, hoping the festival brings a day without worry, a day to just be. Sleep tugs, heavy and kind, and you let it pull you under, the world fading to a soft hum. A mainstream fact: medieval peasants cherished festivals as rare escapes, moments to rest and bond before winter's hardship. A quirky tidbit? Some believe sleeping with a festival ribbon under your pillow ensured sweet dreams. Your lumpy mat's enough for now. Historians still argue whether these breaks recharged peasants or just delayed their exhaustion. Your heavy lids vote recharged. Now, let the day slip away, like embers fading in the hearth. You're safe here, wrapped in the quiet of your hut, the village breathing softly around you. Feel the straw beneath you, forgiving despite its roughness, cradling you into rest. The festival's joy waits, a gentle promise. But for now, sink deeper, your worries softening, drifting like leaves on a slow river. The stars keep watch. The night holds you close, and sleep, warm and heavy, carries you to a place where fields don't demand, and roosters don't crow. Rest, sweet dreamer, until dawn whispers your name.